Welcome to the Library Service Safety and Security Podcast. I'm Dr. Steve Albrecht, and this podcast is sponsored by Library 2.0, and you can find them at library20.com, and it's produced by the founder of Library 2.0, Steve Hargadon. My topic for this half hour is emotional control in dealing with people who are angry and perhaps even mentally ill. And I'm going to use three stories that happened to me personally that involved homeless individuals that came into my environment. One at a coffee shop, one at a training that I was doing, and one that came into City Hall where I was working with one of my clients. And these individuals were under a lot of stress. Something was going on in their lives. There was clear mental illness in at least two of them, and that they were seeking something. And we were able to solve their problems with some solutions that were pretty easy. And so I want you to think about what we may do to even negotiate carefully with people that are coming in who are demanding, who are outraged, who are anxious, who are upset, who may have some mental health concerns coming into the library. So it's about emotional control for you. It's about feeling comfortable, having uncomfortable conversations. And it's also about reading people and reading a situation and saying, how can I be, and in this situation, how can I be a good negotiator with people who are sometimes not in full control of their faculties, but able to give them some options which could be useful and successful for them. So let's tell some stories here and see what you think about how you may be able to apply this at your own library in your own situations that you may be dealing with. Several years ago, I was working in a California city, and I was teaching a training program for one of my clients who is a large municipality. I have the benefit of having been a consultant for a California municipal insurance provider for over 23 years now, and they're my largest municipal client. They cover 123 cities in California from San Diego all the way to the top of the state and to the desert and to the beaches and to the mountains in between. So I have spent a long time working on various projects with all these city agencies around the state. And this one particular time, I was teaching a program, and it was towards the end of the day. And we were in the city council chambers for this particular city. And inside the city council chambers, we had a bunch of staff and managers, supervisors, employees, and there were no cops. It was just us. And the police station was, I think, a couple blocks away, but it wasn't germane in this issue. Sometimes the police station is in the building where I am, and sometimes there are cops in my training, but not this particular time. And in the training, sometimes, almost all the time, my clients would get from my insurance provider client, they would get food and beverages. And so there'd be snacks and there'd be water and sodas and things like that. Well, one time, as I was doing this program, I looked up and there was a guy standing there. Pretty clear he was homeless. He had a backpack and he looked like he had not showered or bathed and showered or shaved or bathed in a while. And he had a pit bull on this sort of belt leash. It was just like one of his belts or a piece of rope that he had that served as a belt leash for this dog. And pretty aggressive looking pit bull. And I'm a dog guy. I have 6 dogs and I love dogs, but sometimes it's hard to tell with pit bulls whether they're excited to see you or just bugged or what. So the pit bull was looking at everybody, and he was looking at me and he said to me, as he stood in the back of the room, "What are we doing here?" And I said, "We're doing a training. What are you doing?" And he said, "I need something to eat." And I said, "Oh, okay." And so the rest of the group sort of froze, and they looked at me and they looked at him. And he was a big guy. He was like 6'5". He had this big beard and he had this dog, and everyone was quite uncomfortable. I said, "Let's take a break, folks. I want to talk to this gentleman here, and I want to get a sense of what he needs and see if I can help him. So let's take a break." And I said to the guy, "Hey, is it okay if all these people walk out and go use the bathroom and go into the hallway? Is it okay if they walk past your dog?" And he goes, "Yeah, it'll be okay." So he held on to the dog, which didn't bark or do anything. It just stood there looking at everybody, and they kind of shuffled past and went out into the hallway and left me with him. So I walked over to the guy and I shook his hand and I said, "I'm Steve. And what was your name?" And he said, "I'm Dave." And I said, "Dave, what's going on?" And he said, "I'm outdoors. I'm not doing well. I'm drunk. I don't feel good. I'm coming off drugs, and so I'm drunk because I'm coming off drugs, and I want to go get high, but I need to eat, and I haven't eaten anything today. And I walked by, and I saw that you had some food and water. And is it okay if I take some food and water?" And I said, "Sure." So I said, "Why don't we load you up with some snacks here? It's nothing exciting, but it'll get you through for a little bit, and we'll give you some water." And I said, "Is it okay if I pet your dog?" And he said, "Yeah." And so he loaded up his backpack with some stuff, and I pet his dog. And I said, what's going on, man? Is there anything I can help you with in terms of maybe some services or a program or some people that I can put you in touch with here at the city that they may be able to give you some support? And he said, no, I keep getting kicked out of the programs because of my drinking. And I want to get sober, but I can't. I want to get off drugs, but I can't. And so I'm living on the streets and I'm super angry about it. And, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, who have you talked to? And so we talked about some of the resources that he had used. He had talked to a social worker in town. He had talked to the mental health services in town. He had talked to a homeless shelter in town. I said, can we get you back in contact with somebody? Can they come talk to you, or can you meet up with them? And so, short story long, I did some phone calls. I got some people in the city who are the clients. They had come over to kind of see what was going on, to get some help for him. And some folks came over and talked to him, and he walked off with them. And I felt like, at least for that moment in time, that we got him in the right direction. And so it was a pretty hairy situation. The dog, the size of him, he was obviously drunk. I mean, not fall down drunk, can't control himself, but angry, drunk, like, I'm ready for a fight. And I just said, this guy's got some issues. I want to be helpful to him. He's got to understand we got boundaries here. He can't scare the folks. He can't scare people with his dog. It wasn't a poodle that he was carrying around. It was a big, pretty good-sized pit bull. And I want to be able to help the guy, but he has to understand that, I will treat him with dignity, but he's got to, not scare anybody or make any kind of threats or threaten anybody in this facility. The fact that the guy wandered through City Hall and down the hallway over to the city council chambers with his dog, and, nobody stopped him, obviously, and maybe they were uncomfortable or felt, it was too intimidating. But I wasn't going to let the guy disrupt my training program, but I also wasn't going to embarrass him in front of other people. I wasn't going to tell him to leave. I wasn't going to say stuff that, some people may have said, like, you need to get out of here. I didn't do that, because I just saw the guy looking like he was hurting. He was in trouble. And also, people like that, and I know from my experience in working with the homeless and in my career, is that, they're used to being talked down to. They're used to being embarrassed. They're used to being made to feel bad. They're used to being ignored. They're used to being judged. And I just said, I got to get this guy something, and I got to figure out what it is that he wants. And so we had that conversation. I got him some snacks. I got him connected to some folks. I don't know whether he changed his ways and got better, but for that moment in time, he was in need, and I tried to help him as best as I could. And fortunately, we had some resources around, and the snacks were there for him, and it at least in that time span for me, it worked out okay. So that's my first story, and I want you to think about kind of, this parallels that you may have had where you've helped people in the library in the same kind of, they just seem like they're really up against it. The second story involves a homeless gentleman that came into a coffee shop where I was in Springfield, Missouri. I was meeting a buddy of mine for coffee. It was early in the morning. This guy came in. It was quite cold outside. He was wearing pants and one shoe and no shirt, and it was cold outside, and he had a backpack, and he was clearly mentally ill. And he came into the coffee shop where everybody was, sort of sitting with their laptops or having coffee. It's, about 7:45, 8 in the morning, and he started screaming. And he came over to me when I was sitting in the corner watching the door, and from my friend, and also because that's the way I sit anyway. And he came over and he sat right by me, and he said, "Man, I'm having a really hard time." And I said, "What's going on?" And he proceeded to tell me about, space aliens and people were chasing him, and there was a sense of that he was in peril from somebody. And so I just listened to him talk, and I said, I will. The guy was a wild-eyed kind of a dude, and just looked, cold weather, half-dressed, all his worldly goods in a bag, and super bugged, and just starting a conversation about demons and being chased and space aliens and people coming to get him, and just a vast conspiracy of folks that were trying to make him fearful and miserable, and at the top of his lungs inside the coffee shop. And when he came and sat by me, he sat right by me. I mean, I had the corner sort of stool with like a bar across the window where I could look out and wait for my friend to show up, and he came and sat right next to me, and I said, "Okay." And everybody moved away like he was dangerous, and I thought, okay, let's just hear what the guy has to say. And so if you have to come across people in the library environment who have firm, fixed beliefs, and, we're not clinicians, but I have enough experience to know schizophrenia talk when I hear it, and I have seen enough people that have firm, fixed beliefs about delusions and fantasies and conspiracies and claims and theories. and ramblings that you and I don't have, not to disagree with them and not to argue with them and not to make them feel bad for what they believe and not to call them, that's stupid and that doesn't really exist and what's the matter with you and you're crazy and things like that. I don't say those things to those folks, and neither should you. When they are that way, in that kind of ranting, manic, delusional state, just talk to them and just say, that sounds rough. Or, boy, I can see what you mean. It's a weird world we're living in right now, man. I hope you're doing okay. And he said, I gotta go find somebody who's gonna take care of me and protect me, because these guys are coming after me and they're from outer space or whatever he was talking about. And I'm like, I hear you. It sounds rough. I mean, it sounds like you're having a tough go in this, and I hope you're doing okay. He's like, thanks, man. So he shakes my hand and he gathers up his stuff and he leaves. And so everybody in the coffee shop's looking at me like, well, what'd you say to get the guy to go away? And I thought to myself, well, I didn't say, get away from me, crazy guy, or I didn't say, you need to calm down or anything like that. And there's another part of the story, which is the coffee shop guy came over and was standing by me, the manager, and he handled the situation well too. He didn't freak out. He didn't, tell the guy you need to leave or that kind of thing. He just said, "What can I do for you?" He said, the coffee shop guy said, I got to help my customers, and I know you got things to do, and so I'm happy to, if I can give you some water, you want to use the restroom. The guy's like, no, man, I'm okay, thanks, but I don't need the restroom or any water. I'm just going to go. And the guy's like, all right. So, he said, good luck to you, and he turned and went back to work. And so the coffee shop guy, who's probably, based on the location where I was, has dealt with some people wandering into the coffee shop that have issues. Didn't try to kick the guy out. Didn't give him the riot act to read him the standard. You can't come in here and bother my business, and you stop bugging my customers, and you're scaring people, and I'm going to call the cops. Blah blah blah. Now, the coffee shop guy can certainly get there. We can certainly go to that, and you can do it as well in the library environment, where you say, I can certainly get to, you need to leave, and if you don't, I'm going to call the police or call security if we have that function. But what he did was kind of the same thing I was trying to do, which is hear the guy out and not argue with him about his firm fixed beliefs about delusional, irrational stuff, and offer some, and I kind of think of this as sort of a negotiated agreement, right? Offered him some possibilities. You need water, you need to use the restroom. You can do both. Now, you can't sit in here and scare people. That was kind of the negotiated, sort of understated part that he didn't say out loud, but that was the message. You can't stay in here and scare people, but I'm willing to do restroom, pass for you or water for you if you want that. So that goes back to something I have said in my training with Library 2.0 people for a long time and in the library training environment, which is you can't do that if you want to stay here. And you can't do that if you want to stay here is a great phrase for people to make a choice as to what they want to do. It's a great phrase for people who don't have a lot of options, and you say, well, you can do this or that, but you can't do either of these if you want to stay here. So you can sit in here quietly, but if you want to yell, you got to go outside, and you can't come back in until you stop yelling. Stuff like that, I think, gives people sometimes a face-saving way out, and also for people that have mental health issues, we're not giving them really complex solutions that they have to sort of divine what the answer is. They can just figure it out, yes, no, pretty quickly. So when I look at the coffee shop guy, it's kind of a negotiated agreement about, I'm not saying that, I'm going to cause a big scene to make you cause a big scene, but I'm going to try to set some boundaries with you when it comes to my customers. And think about it. The coffee shop guy has the same issues that we do in the library, which is this is not his first encounter with this guy. This is not the first time he'll see him. He may see him again tomorrow. Just like in the library world, like the coffee shop, you have frequent flyers. You have challenging patrons, problematic patrons, eccentric patrons, difficult patrons. Patrons that have sort of an intrusive way about them that come back on a regular basis, and you have some that are perfectly fine, and some that cause some energy when they come in the room, when they come in the building, and you can't always pick your customers. And just like the coffee shop guy can't always pick his customers, we don't pick and choose. We invite everybody in. It's a public place. We treat people with the same respect we expect them to treat us as employees and as facilitators and sort of shepherds of the library building, right? We have the sense that we want to provide a safe environment for everybody. So that phrase, the more I think about it and the more I have used it over my career and talked about it as a training thing, you can't do that if you want to stay here, is such a perfect possible solution in an imperfect world where not everybody cooperates and complies, but some people will, and most people will if you treat them the right way, as a way to get some compliance and get some sort of a dignity, empathy, patience conversation with somebody that ordinarily would probably not be treated that way by other people in a public environment or like another coffee shop down the street. The third example I can share is that one of my clients is a city hall in California. And a guy came in who was clearly homeless. He said he was homeless, and he had a backpack, and he had a bicycle, and he was pushing the bike. And he was pushing the bike because he had a flat tire. I think maybe even 2 flat tires, at least one. And he couldn't ride the bike. It was like a mountain bike. So he came into the lobby of the city hall, and they had a glass sort of, banker's tellers type window where, there was a little slot where you could pass papers under, and there was a window with a microphone area in it, so he could talk to the receptionist. It was kind of a closed off, window design like a bank would be, where you can't just hop over the counter. They'd had some issues in this city, and so they had put a more secure barrier in place on the front of City Hall. So this guy comes in and he starts screaming, "I need a phone, I need a phone, I need a phone." That was all he would scream. "My bicycle is broken, I need a phone. I have to call my friend to come pick me up. I don't have a phone, I need a phone." And so the ladies behind the counter, behind the glass, were saying, "Well, we can't give you a phone. We don't have a phone. We're not allowed to make phone calls for you." And he got more and more disturbed. "I need a phone. I have to make a phone call. My friend has to come get me. I can't fix my bike. I need to go. I need to get access to the phone." Well, this is the era of cell phones, and he doesn't have one. And this is the era of no pay phones, and there's no way to make a pay phone call. And the folks behind the counter, and rightly so, if they didn't feel it was appropriate, they said, "Well, you can't use our phone. It's just against our rules." And he got more and more angry. So he picked up his bicycle at one point, after screaming for quite a while, and he threw it against the side window of one of the main plate glass windows of the lobby of the city hall. Now, fortunately, he did it in such a way where it hit, I think, off the rubber handlebars of the rubber seat or something like that. It didn't break the window. It just his bicycle fell to the deck inside the hallway there, the entryway of City Hall, and he picked up his bike and he started up the conversation. And "I need a phone. I need a phone." Finally, somebody had pushed either a panic button at the desk or had called 911, and the police station, the police headquarters for that particular city hall was about 50 feet away in the lobby. They had an entrance point there. You could come in and either go to the left to City Hall or to the right to the PD. And so there was no cops in the building. They were all at a meeting, which happened to be down the hall in City Hall. And all the lieutenants and captains and commanders were in this meeting. All the patrol guys were out on the field, and ladies. So someone ran down the hall and got one of the commanders to come out. And he came out into the lobby, and he saw the guy, and the guy was continuing to scream about, "I need a phone. I have to call somebody, and my bike's broken." And he was just screaming. And the commander said, "I'll call for you." I pulled out a cell phone and said, "What number do you want me to dial?" And the guy told him. He said, "Who am I talking to?" And he said the guy's name. And then the commander got on the phone with the guy and said, "Hey, this guy wants to talk to you." And he handed him his phone. And the guy with the bicycle talked to his friend about coming and picking him up. And they could go fix his bike somewhere. And the guy handed back his phone to the commander, and he didn't say anything. He just walked out. And a little while later, a guy came by in a pickup truck and picked up the guy and his bicycle and took him somewhere. So, kudos to the cop for not blowing it out of proportion. Now, certainly, if the guy had broken the window of the city hall, he'd be in jail. I mean, that's a $1,500 window probably. He'd be in jail. But when you look at that situation, the cop's first instinct for this guy is, what does he need? He needs a phone. He doesn't have one. I have one. Okay? I'll make a phone call on the guy's behalf. I'm not giving him my phone. He's not going to bring it back tomorrow, or I'm not saying, you could use it for the week. I'm just going to make a phone call for the guy's behalf. The guy told him the number. He called, talked to somebody who seemed reasonable, who said, "Yeah, I'll come pick the guy up." Maybe it was a caregiver. Maybe it was his brother. Maybe it was a friend. Maybe it was, somebody that he knows from his life that could help him. But he came, and picked the guy up, and he left, and that was it. And the staff, was obviously upset. They watched the guy throw the bicycle against the window, and they said, "Well, did we do the right thing by pressing the panic alarm?" And I was there, and the answer was yes. And we said, what's the best approach in terms of getting the police? And they said, well, we called over there and no one was there at the station, so we were trying to figure out where they were, and we found out from the dispatcher that they were in our building, and we went and got them. So they pulled somebody out. The commander came over and he took care of the situation as I've explained it. So when you look at these encounters, sometimes our usual approach, especially from the cops, is I'm gonna arrest you if you don't calm down, or you better watch it, pal. I'm gonna arrest you for the things that you're saying or doing. That may not necessarily be that illegal yet. Now, throwing the bicycle at the window is certainly an attempt to break the window, but he didn't. If he'd broken the window, vandalism, felony vandalism with that kind of money, no issues there. He's going to get arrested, but he didn't. No damage to the window, and so the cop said, "What's the best solution for this thing? Is just to get the phone call made for him using my phone." And so think how you might have to do that. Someone says, I'm having a horrible time, and I need you to call my parents, or I need you to call my friend, or I need you to call my caregiver, or I need you to call somebody on my behalf, and we do that. And we say, it's cheap solution. It's a solution that doesn't cost us, any money for the phone call particularly. We're not calling, Sweden. It's down the street. And it demonstrates empathy. And it says to the person, I'm willing to do something for you. But then the second part is you got to do something for me, which is not continue to scream, not continue to frighten folks, not continue to cause a scene and draw attention to yourself in such a way that other people are scared and don't want to come to the library. So I think about these sort of trade-offs that we can do for people, these sort of negotiated trade-offs we can do. I'll do this for you if you do this for me. Or you can't do this unless, you can't stay here unless you stop doing a certain thing. And this trade-off issue in terms of human behavior I find interesting. Notice in each of the three scenarios I told you, there's some commonalities. One, each person in the scenario was clearly homeless. Now, we don't value judge based on what somebody looks like, but you can figure out in your experience if someone seems like they're homeless. And it's not just they dress in sort of an eccentric way, but you can tell that they've not been able to care for themselves and they're homeless. The second is each of those three people either demonstrated or admitted to, and my guy in the came into the training environment admitted, and the other two demonstrated some kind of mental health issue, some kind of mental illness issue in terms of behavior, anger, fear, anxiety, aggression. That kind of a thing. It's demonstrated in their behavior, and we would say that they're having troubles with their conduct based on what's driving their brains, what's going on inside their heads. So we're not playing amateur psychologists. We're saying I suspect mental illness, I suspect homelessness. I may also, especially with my guy, I could smell the alcohol on my guy in the training environment as soon as he walked in. I was 70 feet away from him. I could smell the alcohol on him. And when I walked up to him, he said, I've been drinking all day. I'm drunk, and I'm coming off drugs, and I'm feeling bad. I mean, I was like, yeah, I get it. I can see. I talk about from a safety perspective, what can we smell when we look at people? Smell the odor of alcohol, smell the odor of marijuana. Do we smell body odor, which would suggest depression or mental illness, or their medication is making them, their body secrete foul odors, things like that, pretty obvious to what you experience from what your eyes and your ears and your nose tells you. Again, not a value judgment, just observation. I don't care what people look like, I care what they do. I don't care what people, how they present in front of me as their appearance, I care what they do. And does their appearance in front of me in terms of their behavior impact the library in a negative way? And in those three guys that they were in the library, they certainly would have. So we got the coffee shop, we have the bicycle guy at City Hall, and we have the guy coming into my training environment. And each of those scenarios I've thought about as kind of a behavioral compromise, kind of a negotiated agreement. I'll do this for you if you do this for me. And so that brings up a couple things. We keep our promises with these folks. We agree to do something for them and we do it. So I'll get you the phone, here's the phone. I'll get you some water, here's the water. We don't overpromise, we don't underpromise. We don't fail to keep our promises. We tell them the truth about things. I can't have you do this. You got to go. I don't want to have to call the cops. I will. And those are negotiated agreements as well. You can stop the response or the arrival of the police by leaving, or you can stop the arrival of the police by becoming calm. You can stop the arrival of the police by going away quietly before they get here and not causing any damage or any other issues with anybody else, me included. So this sense of asking for their compliance by making kind of a compromise. I'll do this for you if you do this for me. Allowing them to save face by making a choice. Allowing them to have some decision in it, to act like a human being that's not being told what to do, because a lot of times these folks are always told what to do. They're told what to do by cops. They're told what to do by security people. They're told what to do by store people. They're told what to do by everybody. Even when they go to shelters, they're told what to do. So we give them some sense of choice and compromise. But then also the critical part there is that we enforce consequences. And so if you say you can't do that if you want to stay here, and the guy continues, and you say, I'm going to call the cops if you don't stop, then you have to call the cops. You can't say, well, I'm going to give you 5 more warnings, or, this time I really mean it, or, next time you come in and, I'm just going to let you sit here and do this until, next time you do this, I'm going to call the cops. You can't do that. So not only do you not overpromise to them, and don't fail to keep your promises, but you have to keep your promises to yourself, which is, if I say I'm going to call the cops, I call the cops. If I say I'm going to get security, I get security. If I say I'm going to ask this person to leave, I ask them to leave. If I say that there's something that they have to do for me and they don't do it, I have to enforce the consequences. Otherwise, the message to them is you're not really serious, and I can maybe talk you out of or just ignore you, and that's not what we want with these folks. I wrote a book many years ago with my dad called Added Value Negotiating. The Added Value Negotiating book was all about deal packages. And deal packages in our negotiating book was a set of value factors that we created where people could pick from either deal A or deal B or deal C, either 1, 2, or 3. They couldn't cherry pick the best deal for themselves, not choose the best factors from each one. Each deal stood or fell on its own, but they could negotiate inside the deal once they picked one. And that was really a man bites dog for us approach to negotiating, because a lot of times negotiating has kind of a win-lose feel to it. And what we were saying is, it's not about win-lose. It's about, here's what I'm willing to give you. You pick what you need. I can live with any of these. I have my favorites, of course, but if you pick number 1, I'll be okay with it. You pick number 2, I'd be okay with it. You pick number 3, I'd be okay with it. Think about this in your life in terms of how you buy services from your cable company, from your cell phone company, from some plan that you buy where there's a gold medal package, which is $170 a month, and there's a silver medal package, which is $100 a month, and then there's the bronze medal package, which is $42 a month. The bronze medal package has a lot less stuff than the gold medal package, and the silver medal package has a little bit more than the bronze one, but not as much as the gold. So depending on what you want to pay and what services you need, is it HBO, is it Cinemax, is it Showtime, is it sports channels? That's the gold package, right? If you don't want those things, then you want movie channels, maybe that's the silver one, and if you just want basic cable, that's the bronze one. So we do this all the time in our own lives where we buy stuff. I mean, think about, the combo meals at the fast food restaurant. That's kind of a deal package, right? With this one you get fries, with this one you get a soda, with this one you get a chicken sandwich, and this one you get a hamburger. Think of those ways where we can create negotiated agreements with people where we say, you have this choice or that choice. You have A, B, or C, or A or B. And whichever one you take is okay with me, but you got to pick one. And you can't take the best of A and B and turn it into something that it's not. But you can't sit here and scream and yell. You can scream and yell outside, or you can sit here quietly, but you can't do both. And so I give people, especially folks that have serious mental health issues and are not good listeners, and they're having a lot of emotional reactions to life and stress and anxiety and not good listening skills overall, I think about those folks as how can we negotiate a way with them that isn't the idea of they have to do something that they don't want to do, but because you'd be happy with either choice. You just want them to pick one of them. Sometimes people get confused in the negotiated discussion about things that somehow you're conceding. And I don't use the word concessions, I use the word trade-offs. Do this for me, I'll do that for you. If you can't do this for me, I can't do that for you. And the idea of concessions or conceding, which means I'll concede your point or I'll concede this task or this right or this movement over to you, is suggest giving up. And I like fairness like everybody else. And so if you're going to do something good for me, then I'll do something good for you. If you're unable to do something good for me, then I may be unable to do something good for you. So concessions is not in my vocabulary, the word trade-offs. I'll do this for you, patron, if you do this for me. Think about this for groups of patrons. Think about it for kids. Think about a group of homeless individuals coming in. Think about a group of students coming in. I can do this for you all if you do this for us in return. And so just think about those opportunities that you have to negotiate behavior. How do you look at trade-offs? How do you look at, I'll do this for you if you do this for us? You keep your promises. You expect the other person to keep their promises. These aren't complex discussions we're having. They're pretty simple. Please do this for me and I'll do this for you. And it's about behavior and it's about conduct and it's about impact on the library business where folks are fearful sometimes of the people that are acting up and other patrons are concerned and move away. And you just step in and go, I'm here to help you, but you got to help me. I'm here to go, towards what you need, but you got to come towards what I need. And it's about compliance. And one of the things I've said before in training is sometimes with some people, if you say to them, I bet you know why I'm coming over here, in kind of a lighter touch, they go, yeah, I'm being noisy. I bet you know why I'm coming over here. Yeah, because I'm acting up. Yeah. And so that starts that I see you where you are. I want you to see me where I am as a library professional, as a library employee. And let's come up with a negotiated agreement. All I'm looking forward from you is that you help create a peaceful environment here. All I'm looking forward for you is that you created a safe place here for everybody. And if you can't do that, you got to leave. But if you can, you can stay. And so let's talk about it. Let's negotiate it. So my thanks to the producer of Library Service Safety and Security Podcast, Steve Hargadon. He is the founder of Library 2.0. For more information, visit the Library 2.0 website at library20.com. Until next time, I'm Dr. Steve Albrecht, and thanks for listening to the Library Service Safety and Security Podcast.